Israel launched airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, wounding 4 Palestinians. This following claims that rockets had been fired into Tel Aviv. The Israeli Defense Force confirmed the raids. They say they targeted so-called terrorist sites belonging to Hamas. Palestinian witnesses said over 100 Hamas security positions were hit across the enclave. Gaza's foreign ministry confirmed that at least 4 people, including a woman, have sustained injuries from the attacks. Hamas denied firing rockets. We move to the Caribbean. The French island of Guadeloupe is now an associate member of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, or OECS. The accession agreement signing took place during a special meeting of the sub-regional grouping in Guadeloupe. It's a significant step forward for the region and comes 2 years after a report urged OECS for integration for both Guadeloupe and Martinique.
Before I begin my speech in French, I'd like to tell you thank for your presence here in Guadeloupe.
We are happy to report.
Thank you. Together, we managed to put the interests of our territories before our personal interests. Welcome to Guadeloupe at home, my brother. Notre région Caraïbe est un espace remarquable, d'une richesse culturelle et naturelle souvent louée.
The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, who is the chair of the OECS, praised what he called the variable geometry of integration in the region.
The transformation of the regional integration movement.
De fait, nous sommes témoins actuellement de la transformation, de la permutation du mouvement d'intégration régionale dont nous faisons partie.
And the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, in its expansion with Martinique and Guadeloupe, is in fact a harbinger of what the integration movement would be reconfigured like over the next decade or so.
Et de fait, l'OECS, dans son mouvement d'expansion vers la Martinique et la Guadeloupe, ce mouvement inclusif, est en train de devenir pionnier de la démarche d'intégration régionale telle qu'elle aura lieu dans les prochaines années.
CARICOM will remain, but we are developing in the eastern, southeastern and northeastern area of our Caribbean a pole of integration organized institutionally in the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States.
Our correspondent Alison Kenish does this report.
The signatures have been affixed on the documents, and the French territory of Guadeloupe is now officially a member of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS. Guadeloupe became an associate member of the sub-regional bloc of nations on Thursday, March 14th, during a special sitting of the OECS authority. This development brings the number of members of the OECS to 11. The agreement, signed on March 14th, makes provision for strengthening ties in a host of areas, including education, sports, healthcare, arts and culture, trade and tourism. Officials in Guadeloupe have also signaled their intention to share medical and agricultural research with their new partners. Now, Guadeloupe boasts the largest number of researchers and research facilities in the Lesser Antilles. And while associate members, and those include Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, Guadeloupe and Martinique, do not share a common currency, civil aviation or the Supreme Court, they are engaged in all other fundamental aspects of the OECS. And according to the OECS, the decision to accept Guadeloupe as an associate member comes at a time when the country leaders are hoping to establish an OECS diplomatic mission in Africa. And OECS Chairman Dr. Ralph Gonsalves told the opening ceremony on Thursday that member states are witnessing the transformation of the regional integration movement. He said that now countries in the Dutch Antilles are also hoping to join the OECS as associate members. The two-day summit, which saw Guadeloupe becoming a member of the fold, ends on Friday. Alison Kentish, Telesur, St. Lucia.
We thank Alison for that report. Russia says the power outage in Venezuela was organized from abroad by people with knowledge of the Canadian technology used by the power grid. The Foreign Ministry in Moscow says the blackout, which lasted 6 days, was provoked by a complex long-distance operation against the control systems of the main power generators. The spokesperson for the ministry also said Russia is ready to help Venezuela with its investigation into the outage.
We are talking about a remote attack on the control and monitoring systems of the country's main power plants, which used equipment made in Western countries. It's clear that the algorithms and weak points of these systems were well known to those behind this attack.
Social movements in Venezuela have delivered a letter to the United Nations Human Rights Delegation that is visiting the country. Members of the so-called colectivos and other movements arrived at the Foreign Ministry in Caracas, some of them on their trademark motorbikes. The letter condemns the violation of the human rights of Venezuelan citizens by the United States through its sanctions and other attacks. And 13 activists from the United States International Solidarity Committee are in Venezuela, where they are seeing the people's resistance firsthand. Among their complaints are foreign occupation of sovereign nations and media manipulation.
Activists from the United States condemn what they call a systematic war against Venezuela. They say they will continue to speak out on the issue and tell the truth about the Latin American country.
At a rally against imperialism in Venezuela, against economic warfare, and on March 30th, another major rally and march in Washington, D.C. People are coming from all around the country to march and to say, hands off Venezuela, no sanctions, sanctions are warfare, no military aggression, no more attacks on the Venezuelan people.
The activists are standing in strong defense of self-determination. While touring several communities, they observed firsthand Venezuelans' revolutionary solidarity.
The Trumps will also become the...
On February 23rd, when everything was focused here in a moment of crisis, do the people of Venezuela know that there were demonstrations and rallies in 153 cities around the world, in 70 U.S. cities. There were people saying, no war on Venezuela, hands off Venezuela. So our collective power is capable of pushing back and actually overcoming through the cyber terrorism, of mobilizing people, and we need to accentuate and build that.
Residents say many Venezuelans have suffered as a result of foreign intervention. People on the ground are resisting what they say is an outright violation of international law.
They have been taking our wealth for 500 years until Chavez came and stopped it. We will never be exploited again.
National unity and the defense of sovereignty are the messages coming from the people. And while it's business as usual in Venezuela, the country remains on alert, bracing for more external threats.
Two Russian comedians, Vovan and Lexus, known for humiliating world leaders, have struck again. They previously prank-called U.S. Special Envoy for Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, and now the duo turned their attention to the self-proclaimed interim president, Juan Guaidó. They were impersonating the head of the Swiss Department of Finance. During the call, Guaidó thought he was making arrangements to take money belonging to the Venezuelan state.
Okay. In fact, now you can manage your accounts as a head of state. But by the law, we need your written statements for legal procedure, and then your representative will be able to understand the origin of the money.
Perfect. Our legal representation will start working on that straight away.
Okay, perfect. We also have a more simple procedure, so that you may manage their money before the establishment of diplomatic relations.
Perfect.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the U.S. will impose visa restrictions on International Criminal Court official investigating U.S. war crimes in Afghanistan. This comes after the Trump administration threatened the ICC in September, saying it would ban judges and prosecutors from entering the U.S. if a probe was launched. Pompeo says the policy is already being implemented and that it may also be used to block the ICC from investigating U.S. allies, including Israel.
By handicapping our partners.
On Twitter, a director at Human Rights Watch, Andrea Prasau, called the action a thuggish attempt to stop investigators from doing their jobs. She says, quote, it sends a clear message to torturers and murderers alike that their crimes may continue unchecked. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged the world to unite against the rise of anti-Muslim hatred. In a message of condolence following the New Zealand mosque attacks, he said there needs to be a concerted effort against Islamophobia. The attacks that left 49 people dead have been blamed on the increased demonization of Muslims by right-wing politicians and the far right. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. People in Brazil demonstrated on Thursday to demand justice for the murder of Rio de Janeiro councilwoman Marielle Franco. Our own Andre Vieira joined one of the protests in Porto Alegre, where Afro-Brazilian women made a particular stand.
March 14 marked the one-year anniversary of the death of murdered Rio de Janeiro councilwoman Marielle Franco and of her driver, Anderson Gomez. This week, police arrested 2 men in connection with the murder. The 2 men are former military policemen and have links to paramilitary groups. One of them is even the neighbor of President Jair Bolsonaro.
Marielle's fight for justice must remain alive. The people who murdered her cannot get away with it. We need to show how poverty is affecting our nation. We need to put an end to it.
Across Brazil, women marched to demand justice for Franco. In Porto Alegre, to the south of the nation, Afro-Brazilians led the demonstrations. This history student has the same name as the late councilwoman. She promises to continue the fight for justice and uphold the legacy of Franco.
My name is also Marielle. Black women need to stand with her. We must not give up.
Brazil is the 5th country for the highest number of femicides in the world. The case for Afro-Brazilian women is even worse. According to experts, the murder rate of Afro-Brazilian women stands at 71%, much higher than women from other ethnicities. On March 14, these women stood strong in the resistance, confirming they will continue the fight against the far-right government.
Us black women continue our fight to exist safely. We will not give up, and we will not turn back.
This is a very difficult time for the less fortunate, for black communities, but especially for women. We are attacked not only verbally and physically, but even through public policies that demonize us.
3 generations of Afro-Brazilian women united under a single chant, Marielle lives, along with little Anaya, who's 7 years old. Her mother and grandmother took to the streets.
We must fight for Marielle, and we must fight to find out who killed her. We need justice.
The seed planted by Marielle is now bearing fruit. Across the streets of Brazil and the world, we see people continuing her fight and shouting at the top of their lungs that Marielle is here.
Desde Porto Alegre, em Rio Grande do Sul, André Vieira, Sebastião Soto, Telesur, Brasil.
Hundreds of teachers, students, and families in Brazil have staged protests against President Jair Bolsonaro's plan to relax gun control laws. The protest was held near the school where on Wednesday 2 former students killed 8 people, mostly school children, before turning the guns on themselves. 2 months ago, President Bolsonaro signed a decree making it easier for citizens to acquire guns.
What people went through here was an extreme moment. The greatest crime that can be committed against humanity is to take young lives away, to stop your future. To the young people that are here, to the parents who are here, those who are younger and our future, and taking away this future is the worst crime you can commit.
Heavy rains poured on Peru Wednesday night, causing landslides and flooding residential streets. The northern city of Trujillo raised a state of alert after floodwaters gushed through streets, entering homes and damaging property. Residents tried in vain to set up sandbags to control the flow of water. No deaths or injuries have yet been reported, but authorities are cautioning residents to stay off the streets. The government in Nicaragua has released 50 people who were detained for their part in violent protests last year. As talks with the opposition restarted on Thursday, the Vice President Rosario Murillo promised that a significant number of prisoners would be freed. The opposition is divided over this attempt to restart a dialogue. The main Civic Alliance group is taking part, but student leaders have refused to join them.
There are some dissenters who are not in agreement with us sitting down to talk. I think we have the same objective, but we disagree over tactics. I think we need to show in practice that this is the right way, so that they come back and join us. I think we have to give these talks a chance.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, has asked the Colombian government to begin a ceasefire with the ELN and reestablish peace negotiations. The representative for that office in Colombia, Alberto Brunori, says such a move will help reestablish trust. The peace talks began in February 2017 and have suffered several setbacks. They ended after an attack on a police school in January. This led to arrest warrants against the ELN negotiators who were in Cuba, where the talks were taking place. He said Bachelet is worried about the hundreds of murders of human rights defenders last year. Police in Trinidad and Tobago have received formal training in the use of taser devices in a bid to reduce deadly force. Officers of the Emergency Response Unit will be assigned special belts to hold the non-lethal weapon. The police commissioner had come under fire for his one-shot, one-kill policy. There were 34 police killings last year. The use of tasers and pepper spray is part of the police service's minimum use of force policy.
One of the advantages of this device is that it allows the officer to incapacitate the person without the use of physical force, which causes injuries and broken bones and fractures, or shooting the person. We noticed in South Florida, we noticed a reduction of injuries to the subject by about 86% and a reduction of officer injuries by 96% once we deployed this device.
The United Nations in Africa has promised to respond to the demands of protesting students calling for action on climate change. The president of the UN Environment Assembly said that at the annual meeting that it's about to make the most ambitious declaration and respond to protesting youth's climate change concerns across the globe.
We are seeing a level of civic engagement on climate by young people that is utterly unprecedented. Today, these young people are marching around the globe for climate action. As the Secretary General has said, we need to heed their call.
Mass demonstrations are underway in Algeria. These are images out of Algiers. The protests were sparked by fears President Abdelaziz Bouteflika wants to extend his 2-decade-long rule. Earlier this week, he canceled April's election after he vowed not to seek a 5th term. Cyclone Idai has made landfall in the Mozambique city of Beira, leaving several injured. About 500,000 people are without electricity. Houses and trees were destroyed and pylons downed. In Malawi and Mozambique, scores of people have already been killed and tens of thousands displaced by floods over the past week.
Government implemented a curfew from 11 a.m., but we are outside anywhere. I think we need to change mentalities. If the government did that, it's because the situation at any point can get worse.
More than 100 buildings are to be demolished in Nigeria. This comes after Wednesday's deadly building collapse. The raising of buildings has already started on Lagos Island. Crews are expecting to bring down 3 each day. The authorities say several homeowners have been served with demolition notices. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Thousands of young people are marching through cities across the globe, taking part in a global day of student protests demanding action on climate change. In Kenya, students marched across the Karura forest, calling on world leaders to take action on climate change.
We are amongst those people standing for change in what we believe in. Some people believe that our cause is pointless or that nothing will be achieved by us simply marching, but I beg to differ. If all of us thought like they did, nothing would happen in the world.
In India, around 200 students took part in a protest in Delhi, one of the world's most polluted cities.
I'm in school, I'm in 10th standard, and some time back we had to take a break from going to school because of the horrible amounts of air pollution, and we were actually given a public holiday for those 3 days. So I think Delhi is really, we really need to speak more about this. I think a lot of people are in denial that climate change is a thing. They just don't want to talk about it, they don't want to accept it. And there are others who are saying we give you our prayers, we give you our wishes, but we don't want prayers, we don't want wishes, we want action.
Italian students took to the streets holding banners reading "There's no Planet B" and "We don't have the time."
I think we're all here because there's only one Earth and we're destroying it. Everybody is contributing, even unconsciously, and I think nobody wants really to do it, but it's in the habits.
In France, dozens of young people in Paris's business district blocked the entrance to Société Générale's headquarters to denounce its finance of climate damage.
Today we are at Société Générale's headquarters in La Défense, which is one of the largest French banking organizations, to denounce its support for fossil fuels. Between 2016 and 2017, banks financed fossil fuels with more than 40 billion euros, despite science alerting us repeatedly that fossil fuels must remain in the ground.
Dutch teachers held their first ever nationwide strike on Friday to demand higher salaries, better working conditions, and quality education. The workforce in the Netherlands said they feel left behind by strong economic growth that has not been matched by wage increases. The teachers are calling for an increase of 4 billion euros to the government's annual 30 billion euro education budget, with over half of the extra money going to primary and secondary schools.
And I'm glad that so many people are thinking the same way, to say this have to stop. Government, you have to listen to us, you have to invest in education, because we are telling people that we are going to the education is one of the most important things of society. So invest in education.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.